Hello, it's Dr. Brian McDonough, and welcome to the Dr. Brian McDonough Show, a show specifically dedicated to talk about COVID, a show to look back as we approach 1 million deaths in the United States. This is not a show I ever thought I would do, a show I ever wanted to do. It is frankly devastating that I even have to do it. You know, the Dr. Brian McDonough Talk Show, which is a lot of fun, has its roots in what was a desperate attempt to educate people about COVID in the earliest stages and to continue as the political whirlwind whirled through our country. I did what I could and have continued to do what I can to explain things. Of course, it's not quite as necessary now. I think we kind of have reached a point where we understand what we can and can't do. But at that time, it was very important. You know, the first time I did anything was February 29th of 2020. Now, COVID had hit our shores in January. And I started a podcast, which is still around, 305 episodes. It's called Coronavirus Today, which is all throughout. You can get it, obviously, and listen on your favorite podcast network. But this is a segment from the first one, and all I have is a video of the image. Obviously, I don't have actual video, so just listen for a second.
For instance, today, February 29th, we had a situation where the president has spoken. Mayor Bloomberg is making a 3-minute video talking about his opinions. Government leaders are speaking. It seems because we have so many media outlets, all sorts of people are speaking. Now, I tend to be a big believer in people from the NIH, the CDC, and those who are involved in this every day. I understand that politicians need to get in front of these things. It's part of their leadership. It's also part of how they get votes and they do what they do. I'm an apolitical person. I'm really concerned about coronavirus, which doesn't care if you're Democrat, you're Republican, you're a citizen, you're not a citizen, if you're from the United States or you're not. I think it's pretty clear. So what we need to do is talk about basic information.
In my career, I had already, as a news person, as a physician, I had already covered HIV. I interviewed Dr. Tony Fauci back in 1990, talking about treatments and ideas at that time. I knew him from way back. I also knew how viruses spread. And I was kind of frustrated that there seemed to be a lot of misinformation out there. Well, of course, we were only at the beginning. Initially, it was very tough for those of us who were out there, even during the lockdown, because we knew that we were going to be facing this virus. We knew that we were the ones who kind of were at risk. And it wasn't just providers. It was people working in stores. It was people driving trucks. You knew that at that time you could be exposed and there was nothing anyone could do. The numbers were increasing of deaths, and the deaths were affecting many of us. It was frightening. In my case, I would come home, dress in the garage, throw clothes into the washer, sleep in the basement. That was the world that I was living in and that many of us had to deal with. But I was also worried about my patients at that time because they weren't getting the care they needed. Remember, telehealth was still an idea. It wasn't necessarily being used. This was the beginning of the pandemic. I recorded this as one of my first reports back on May 3rd of 2020.
The biggest worry, obviously, is the spread of COVID and what can happen. But there's an underlying worry I have that's really important. What people aren't being seen for problems that are very important in their lives? For instance, are my diabetics still controlled? Am I in a situation where my patients who have heart issues are ignoring things like chest pain because they don't want to come in because they're worried about COVID? Are there a subset of people, and I know there are, who are very anxious about this and they're struggling because they're struggling financially, they're struggling because of isolation, they're struggling because they don't seem to have control of their world like they used to? All of these people are typical patients. All of them might be people like you who haven't reached out to your physician, who haven't really taken the time because you're kind of worried. You don't want to see your doctor and get COVID.
The concern I had became real, that people were going to take sides, not necessarily based on science, based on politics, ideology, or, as you have often on the internet, misinformation. Struggling, I was trying to get out the word that viruses don't care. Viruses are apolitical.
There are some keywords for today. The keywords: nothing has changed. The Washington model, that Washington state model that experts look at, is now predicting as many as 3,000 deaths as we head into the summer. That's 3,000 deaths in the United States per day in a predictive model. People are asking, why would that number double from where we are now? The answer is, except for the fact that we are opening up the country in different parts, nothing has changed. Let me say it again, nothing has changed when it comes to the virus. The virus doesn't care what governors say and what leaders say and what we say, frankly. The virus attacks the way it attacks. So if more people come in contact, more people will get the virus, especially if they're not practicing social distancing, especially if they're not wearing masks. Nothing has changed.
I look back at that hair and realize it was May. I actually got a haircut that year in early June in the driveway, wearing a mask with another person wearing a mask, doing what I could to at least get some of that curly hair, looking like I was a refugee from the 70s, out. But that was what we were all facing. But there were other concerns. There was misinformation. Remember all the information that if you're young, you are free of it? That wasn't the case. If you are young, you are less likely to have serious problems like those who are older or those who are immune compromised. But if you're young, and we were learning, it was not a free ride. And yet that still persists. Listen to what I said back on June 22nd, 2020. Hello, I'm Dr. Brian McDonough with the new normal for Monday, June 22nd, 2020. And I have a very important message for young people. And by that, I mean people under 35. The sense through the media and everyone else has been that if you're young, you're going to get through this and you're going to do well. Let me rephrase this. If you're young, you are less likely to die than an older person. You are less likely to be hospitalized and die than a person with pre-existing medical conditions. But you're not going to get off easy. There will be damage to your body. Remember, this virus aggressively attacks the endothelial lining of blood vessels, whether you're young or old. It blows up the lining of blood vessels. What that does is it causes inflammation. And we're finding that in young people, it is doing early damage to the lungs. Damage that I don't know if we can equate it to years of smoking cigarettes or exposure to radon or whatever you want to say, but it's doing damage to the lungs that could reveal itself as bigger problems in 15, 20, 25 years. Now, that may not mean much to you when you're 26, 30 years old, but it will mean a lot when you're older. And of course, the question came up, when will we return to normal? This last video I want to show you, this one is disturbing because as we approach 1 million deaths in this country, the number I was worried about then was 200,000, and it seemed, I remember at the time, devastating. It is one of the most common questions I get. When will things return to normal? Not a new normal, but normal. Hi, it's Dr. Brian McDonough, and I'm recording this on September 20th, 2020. And today or tomorrow, we're probably going to hit the number 200,000 in deaths, a very frustrating number, a number that will get a great deal of attention. So people are asking the question, like, how long is this going to last? And here's what the experts say. The pandemic, which is the rapid, uncontrollable spread of the virus, might end, but it will continue to transmit at lower levels. This is called endemic spread. Now, it sounds depressing, but over time, endemic viruses typically become less harmful. In the short run, many experts predict a second peak that will be later on in the year, probably in the fall during flu season, before the virus does become endemic. Now, probably, and we hope, normality will return gradually. The virus will be with us for the foreseeable future. And we have to pace ourselves for things getting worse before they get better. They will get better, but none of the experts can predict exactly when. Now, the other question is, what about the death rate? We're learning certain things. Any prediction that anyone gives you probably is only a guess when you get beyond 4 weeks. It's almost like predicting the weather, because there are so many different variables, we don't know what's going to happen with the death rate. So when people say we might have another 25,000 or 4,000 a day or 800 a day, Don't believe them. They really don't know. They can only go out about 4 weeks. They're not trying to be deceitful, but you just can't predict it. So the bottom line here is the new normal is a term that I've grown to detest because I don't want to accept a new normal. We actually used to call these reports the new normal, and I shifted away because what I want is us to get back to the old normal, but we're going to have a period of time before we get to that ultimate goal. We just have to be patient. Above all, please keep wearing masks, keep respecting social distance. It's the best chance we have. And that is all we had. Wearing masks, social distancing. The medications were not there. The vaccines were not there. And then finally, I remember like it was yesterday. I was so excited. Couldn't get it fast enough. December 22nd, 2020, got my first dose of the vaccine. Since that time, I've gotten a second dose and 2 boosters. It is, I am convinced, what has kept me from ending up in the hospital or worse, because what we are seeing is that although you can get the virus after being vaccinated and you carry it for a much shorter time than those who aren't vaccinated. And you are far, far, far less likely to end up in the hospital. 90 to 95% of our hospitalizations are people who aren't vaccinated, and the same numbers for deaths. So what do? I continue to try to suggest to people that this nasty coronavirus is something that you need to battle through vaccine and through medications. And if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to take advantage of those things and you don't believe in the science, please try to wear a mask because you at least can protect yourself from the aerosol spread. Have we been perfect in this battle? Absolutely not. I can tell you we haven't. For instance, I was totally telling people, watch surfaces, wear gloves. Amazon's delivering something to the house. Make sure you clean every surfaces. Wait, surfaces have not been that important. We've learned that over time, but that's science. You learn things over time. And yet those who fight against the science say, you told me something that was wrong. Well, guess what? I've told people a lot that was wrong in the last 35 years of my practice because we learn. The crime is if you don't learn and then take the new information and use it. The new information, it's consistent. And I'm going to wrap it up with this point. The new information tells you, wear a mask, social distance, if you are around people that you are worried about. That would be children who haven't had the opportunity to be vaccinated. If you have not been vaccinated, please think about it. It gives you the best chance and it will help you. Again, all of these videos, everything I've done is not funded. Why would I sit here and tell you this? I have nothing to gain. There's no product. You can check it out. There's nothing I'm doing. All I'm trying to do is get information, save as many lives as I can. And it isn't rocket science. I said it 2 years ago. Nothing has changed. We know how the virus spreads. We know what prevents the spread. We know what it does when it gets in your systems, and we know the percentages of people who are going to die, and we're now approaching 1 million deaths. The bottom line, I don't want it to go higher. I want it to try to slow down. Please think about the vaccine, use common sense, and if you don't, please be safe. My thoughts, prayers, wishes are for you. Thanks for watching the Dr. Brian McDonough Show. I appreciate you joining us on the program. And again, most of the time, I'm going to be talking about things that are not necessarily COVID. I'm going to talk about fun things, things we can enjoy, things that we can actually have fun thinking about, because I really believe that's kind of what people need. We need to get away from these thoughts. We need to do what we can to try to enjoy life, to try to get through things and do the best we can and get to the state where this is something that is endemic. It is something that will not dominate our lives. Thanks for watching this special edition of the Dr. Brian McDonough Show. I greatly appreciate you taking the time and joining me. The Dr. Brian